I'm joined today by Bill Scher. He is a senior writer at Campaign for America's Future. Bill, we've been talking about Ukraine, Russia, Vladimir Putin, and the Crimean Peninsula pretty often, and it's been interesting to observe how strains on both the American left and American right have reacted to the story and have commented on it. On the right, there was this kind of interesting thing where, because prior to the most recent storm of coverage in Russia and Ukraine, there had been some right-wingers who kind of liked the so-called strong stance on LGBT propaganda that Russia had been taking, but at the same time didn't really want to be seen as supporting our evil enemies who Mitt Romney talked about, Vladimir Putin and Russia. On the left, there's also been an interesting split in terms of opinion, hasn't there?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think certainly as far as folks in elective office mainly, you're seeing a lot of bipartisanship around Obama's foreign policy. Even though there's a lot of friction in the air, there's still cheap shots that are being made. But at the end of the day, the bill gets on the floor of the House and Senate to give Ukraine aid. It passes with very large numbers. So, and that very much buttresses Obama's foreign policy. If Republicans wanted to sabotage Obama, that would have been their time to do it. But you do see these elements on the far left and far right, I think most clearly voiced by Alan Grayson on the left and Dana Rohrabacher on the right, outright defending Putin, which is, I find bizarre. But I mean, it's one thing to have a difference of opinion as far as American interventionism or isolationism. You know, there are some legitimate views that can be had there, but to outright say that what Putin is doing is legitimate in Crimea, saying this, you know, the people chose it in a referendum. This was done bloodlessly without anyone dying. This should be praised as how decisions should be made. I mean, that to me is just whitewashing what's going on there. They had a referendum where there was no choice to vote no. It was different types of secession.
Well, not only that, I think that there's a huge double standard that you could argue is offensive in the sense that in a similar situation in the US where there was a so-called referendum, if some other country decided to use the displeasure with the existing government to come in and do anything, I mean, forget about annexing territory, but to do anything, it would be completely unacceptable. And I feel that those who say, well, look at the circumstances and here's kind of why it's okay in Russia or Ukraine, are kind of in a sense implying that, well, Ukraine is not a country like the US is a country, so different standards apply for what is acceptable for other countries to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of inconsistency going on here. And because I think you have, on the Grayson left, there's a knee-jerk antipathy to America doing anything. I mean, it's essentially a form of isolationism, that if America is being involved in broad, there must be something untoward about it. And I think that is a very simplistic and myopic way to look at the situation. And I think on the right, you have a knee-jerk anti-Obama sentiment. Would Dana Rohrabacher be saying this if George Bush was involved? Probably not. And let's talk about Putin as a great leader and Obama as a weak and feckless leader. Any opportunity to make that case, let's take it. But I am more interested in the strain on the left here because I as a liberal, I'm concerned when people are taking liberalism, I think, on a bad track. I totally understand that there are plenty of examples of bad American actions over the course of history. There's plenty of times we have not lived up to our stated ideals. I don't discount any of that. But that's not an argument to completely withdraw and not live up to our ideals in any circumstance. I mean, if we did that, that would give Russia's anti-democratic, imperialistic ambition to go totally unchecked and leave a lot of Ukrainians left hanging. I don't think that is a very wise way to go. I don't think it's in the tradition of liberalism to say that liberal values should not be attempted to be exercised on the global stage, because when often we've done that, it's been for the better of the world.
Well, as a progressive, I'm increasingly concerned by, based anecdotally on the several hundreds every time an international story comes up that I receive, that there seems to be somewhat of a disconnect where I feel that while many progressives, and this is not a praise of conservatives, by the way, I'm not saying the opposite of this about conservatives, but that many American progressives are taking a very superficial view of many international conflicts. Venezuela is another example that was pretty concerning to me, and checking the box, so to speak, that they've heard or been told is the box that liberals should check to be on the right side. And with Venezuela, as someone who's from Argentina and has a long history of following a variety of South American governments, I was accused of just having the same priorities as Cato and the right-wing groups that want a right-wing puppet government in Venezuela, when I was saying, the allegations that this is just a right-wing protest are wrong. A lot of the polls are being straight up mistranslated from Spanish to give the wrong opinion. I was attacked by liberals for taking the, quote, same view as the right. And now that this is happening with Russia, you have your concerns with the left there. I think there's a problem with American progressives and international stories.
I mean, I don't want to paint too broad a brush. I don't think all progressives
certainly not
are like this.
Certainly not.
But I think there's a long-standing tension between putting the priority on democracy or putting the priority on a type of economics. And so the folks on the left who are very interested in seeing, a more socialist government in Latin America might deprioritize aspects of the Chavez government that were undemocratic. I mean, at the time, I would point out, look, Chavez was democratically elected. I don't like what he's doing in this area, that area, but I at least have to say if it's an internationally monitored election and it was blessed and he's elected, then you got to accept that. Let's not. So I would disagree with the folks on the right that were attacking Chavez at that point. But when undemocratic actions are taken in Venezuela, you got to call that out too, whether or not you like the economic program or not. And I think there is increasing concern right now that that's what's happening in Venezuela today. I don't think that means you're a shill for Cato. You don't have to say that. Therefore, everything about the Venezuela government economically should be thrown out the window too. It's a question of how do we get the will of the people reflected in Venezuela and elsewhere. I think America has an interest in that generally. It doesn't matter what part of the world, if it's on our border or not on our border, we have raised the standard of democracy going back to Woodrow Wilson and FDR and Harry Truman that I think has been to the betterment of the world, and we should stick to that.
I think that there's another element here when it comes to kind of like the progressive lens applied to international conflict. I was recently rereading George Lakoff's Don't Think of an Elephant, and in it, he talks about the 6 kind of different strains or areas of focus for progressivism. And one of them is that the solutions to our problems or their problems or problems in general will come via money and socioeconomic means. And that seems to be not necessarily in conflict, but at least not completely aligned with the other option you just mentioned, which is let's focus more on freedom and democracy and elections and activism and that side. In the US, maybe because all of us are more familiar with what goes on within our country than outside of it, it's easier to reconcile 1, 2, or 3 of these different strains that lead one to a progressive point of view. And it doesn't always all go together in the same way in other countries. You might have elements in other countries that, because of the government, sound more right-wing, but are part of a broader progressive context, or maybe not. But the idea that being pro-gay rights and being for social welfare programs, all these things that fit together with American progressivism, it may not be the same puzzle pieces in other countries, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and look, and it's difficult. I mean, if you're promoting democracy in the Arab world, that doesn't always square with promoting women's rights and LGBT rights.
Certainly,
and that's difficult. And I'm not saying these are easy puzzles to solve, and we have to find a way as Americans to push on both fronts. But I think we get in the most trouble. Not only for American interests, but global interests, if we are seemingly overriding the popular will in another country. That's what I think American intervention is not been praiseworthy. But to get back to Ukraine, I mean, that's not what's going on here. You had a will from the Ukrainian people to be more economically integrated with the EU,
right,
and not be under Russia's thumb. And we were working for a while to encourage that and support that, and essentially won the day with the overthrow of the Ukrainian president by the parliament. And Russia is now trying to save face by picking off a piece of Ukraine. So it may be that we are unable to stop that from happening. I'm not supporting every neocon crackpot idea down the pike. I don't want to get into a shooting war with Russia over this. But it was important for us to say, let's support Ukraine where whatever the people of Ukraine want to do. And you can't say that about Crimea, because that decision was literally under a Russian military occupation,
right,
with referendum without real choices. So that's where I think America is, and I think it's better this way than to let Russia just steamroll all of Ukraine, which might have happened if we weren't involved.
No question about it. Bill Scher, senior writer at Campaign for America's Future. Thanks as always for being on, Bill.
Great to talk to you.